Imagine a life where comfort doesn't exist, where survival is not a weekend camping game, but your daily reality. Where a simple mushroom could either be your dinner or your death sentence. This is not a dystopian future. It's the real, raw past. Welcome to the medieval world. And today, we're stepping into the shoes, well, often barefoot, of the medieval peasant, uncovering the 7 survival skills that kept them alive, generation after generation. But more than just listing skills, we'll uncover the grit, cleverness, and astonishing resilience that helped them thrive in a world that gave nothing for free. So settle in, and by the end, you might just look at your local dandelion with entirely new respect. In a world before supermarkets, where coin was rare and starvation common, medieval peasants became masters of nature's hidden pantry. Foraging wasn't a hobby, it was necessity. Personal commentary. Imagine relying on your ability to find plants in the woods every day, or you and your family go hungry. That was the daily pressure faced by peasants. They learned to identify edible roots, greens, berries, mushrooms, not in books, but through oral tradition and raw experience. One wrong mushroom could mean a deadly mistake, but with experience came a near mythical mastery of their environment. Real-life example. Historical records from 13th century France describe communal berry-picking days, where villagers gathered hundreds of pounds of wild fruit to ferment into jam or mead. These events weren't just about food, they were part of community bonding and collective survival. For peasants, farming wasn't just work, it was war against nature. The 3-field system, rotating crops between 3 fields, boosted yields, but success depended on flawless timing. Commentary and insight. Peasants understood things modern gardeners overlook. They watched the moon, counted saint days, and trusted signs in the sky. Some even used astrological charts. A wrong planting week could mean starvation months later. Example. In 1316, during the Great Famine, English farming records show crop failures across multiple shires. Those who had diversified with peas and beans instead of solely grain were the only ones who scraped through. Without fridges, preserving food was an art form. Pickling, salting, drying, smoking all required precision and labor. Commentary. Imagine your entire winter depends on how well you managed your food in September. Failure wasn't just inconvenient, it could be fatal. Salt was so valuable, it was often used like currency. Example, a German peasant diary from the early 1400s mentions a salt crisis, where roads were blocked and their salt shipment never arrived. The family had to boil down seawater for days just to preserve meat for winter. Repair skills were critical. Clothes were patched endlessly. Tools rehandled. Broken pots were refired. Rope was handmade. Candles home-poured. Commentary. What we call a DIY lifestyle today was their version of daily life. A broken hoe wasn't just annoying. It delayed your planting and jeopardized your yield. Everyone had to be a part-time blacksmith, carpenter, cobbler, and chemist. Example, in one 14th century village, blacksmith services were offered on a rotating basis. Each peasant learned to forge basic items during winter months when farming slowed. Peasants weren't just threatened by weather and famine. They lived under constant threat from bandits, soldiers, tax collectors, and rival villages. Commentary. These communities developed ingenious ways to stay safe, lookouts, signal fires, smoke patterns, and pre-dug hiding pits. Tools became weapons. Escape routes were mapped and memorized. Example, during a skirmish in 1347, villagers in the Loire Valley used coded bell rings to signal enemy approach. Families fled into woods and didn't return until the threat passed. Without hospitals, peasants relied on herbal knowledge passed down for centuries. Some of these remedies were surprisingly effective. Commentary. What's fascinating is how much of this folk medicine has scientific backing today. Honey, garlic, willow bark, and moss all have legitimate antibacterial or healing properties. Example, sphagnum moss was used on wounds for its absorbency, centuries before scientists discovered it was almost sterile. A monastery in Scotland grew 6 varieties of healing herbs and documented their effects in careful journals. With no forecasts, peasants became expert meteorologists. They watched the sky, trees, animals, and even pain in their bones. Commentary. Today, we rely on apps, but back then, a red sky or the flight of birds told you everything. If you missed the signs, your harvest and your family paid the price. Example, records from a Benedictine monastery list 32 rhymes used to predict rain. Some of these sayings remain in folklore today, like red sky at night, shepherd's delight. These weren't just survival skills. They were survival mindsets, flexibility, observation, community, ingenuity. Medieval peasants didn't just survive, they adapted constantly. In many ways, they were more prepared for adversity than many modern people today. We may not need to forage for mushrooms or ferment our berries, but their story reminds us of something deeper, human resilience, that under the harshest conditions, people find ways to endure, to thrive, to live. So the next time you throw away wilted greens or replace a broken tool, think about the people who would have given everything for what we so easily discard.